New York is a center for finance, culture, art, and fashion. But it wasn't always this way. Nowhere was this problem more obvious than in Times Square, the home of Broadway theater.
People were shunning the area. They weren't coming.
I had to take my army boot off when I walked in the apartment to go on a roach hunt to kill the roaches.
Something simply had to be done.
In Hell's Kitchen, there were these extraordinary buildings that ran between 9th and 10th Avenue down on 43rd to 42nd Street.
I learned to play guitar there. I learned to play piano there. I learned to act.
Played my first song that I wrote lyrics to and played the music to on that piano in that apartment in that building.
That building raised me.
For as much as I could have a sense of community, there was a sense of community in Manhattan Plaza.
It was our building.
And it was the beginning of the Renaissance of Times Square.
Hi, Tilly.
Hello, hello.
Hi, Alice Elliott.
Yes.
And Alice is, she's my colleague, so I'm really biased about her. She is she's excellent documentary filmmaker. Were you nominated for Oscar or, right, yeah, she was nominated for the Oscar. She got many prizes all over the world. She is the head of the documentary track at undergraduate film and television at Tisch. And she's also a great mentor. It's like when you see her teaching or talking to students, it looks like it's a mission almost.
What is a great mentor, Alice?
I think someone who gets you, someone who understands you, and then will help guide you in fulfilling if you have a life mission or you have a cause, or I think also if you've had a challenge, that they will give suggestions about how to work with the challenge, how to make it a strength.
So how do you, let's say you follow a student that you're the student's mentor. Are you following a project? Are you following something bigger than that?
It depends. I always let the student lead how much attention they want. And so if it's a formal relationship, like right now, I'm an advisor on a thesis. And so we have certain benchmarks that we have to meet. I have to read her draft of her thesis, and she's doing a script. So I read that, I give her notes. I try to connect her with the bigger world in what she's writing about. If I hear about a film that I think she should see, if there's someone I think she should meet, I try to make that happen for her. But if it's an informal relationship where there aren't specific benchmarks, then I just, I kind of keep up with them. I just email them, hi, how's it going? What are you doing? Send me what you're working on. I'd like to see. So these are for students that I've had and seem to want to keep up a relationship.
Now, I would like to start, if possible, about what, it sounds kind of bold, type of documentaries that really characterize you. You can tell us what what kind of projects appeal to you?
Well, I'm interested in projects that have a lot of heart. And I'm interested in stories that are, I have two kinds of stories that I'm interested in, really. It's about telling the stories of people who don't have a chance to tell their own stories. So a lot of that is people with disabilities. And then I'm also interested in communities in transition. What happens when people move in or out of a neighborhood, and how that affects the person and the neighborhood.
Okay. So I think the one documentary was up for the Oscar. Was it the collector from Bedford Street, right?
Yes, the collector of Bedford Street.
Can you summarize it for us?
Sure. It's about my neighbor who is a man with an intellectual disability, meaning he had a low IQ. And every year he raised thousands of dollars for charity, even though he lived at the poverty level. And so he taught me that being a philanthropist doesn't mean you have to have a lot of money. And he taught me that you can make big change in the world one donation at a time. He taught me the way that you raise money is you ask. And so it was a very interesting relationship because I learned about this, they call it service leadership, that a leader serves the community. And so I learned about this from the International Kiwanis, that service is what makes leadership. And Larry, the film went around the world with the young Kiwanis team who trained leaders in all
What is
over the world.
Kohanist?
It's an international service organization.
Okay.
And they train students in leadership all around the world. So the film went to Kuala Lumpur, it went to Japan, it went all over the United States. And I think it's still being used to train young people in the idea of service leadership, that the person who serves the community is the leader.
Alice, I'm collecting for the age war. Hello, sir. Could I see you 1 minute? Could I see you 1 minute? Hello, ladies. Could I see you 1 minute? Could I see you, young fellas? Any amount. Last year, I collected $500 for the age war.
So do you want to give a little donation?
Well, let me think about it. I feel like every time I see you, you're collecting for something else.
Yeah. I'm a collector.
Very good, Larry. So we have $430 and $70 in checks. So that's $500.
$520.
That's wonderful. And another one, yes, $520.
At one point, we had a major flood in the basement underneath Larry's apartment. And the story that unfolded was that Larry was giving out the keys to his apartment and to the building to a number of homeless men, and that he was offering them the chance to have showers in our building during the summer.
When I'm lonely, I deal with the wrong people. The co-op board tried to kick me out. They took me to court, and we agreed I won't keep homeless people anymore in my apartment. Alice, if I disappear on Saturday, you'll be over your troubles with me. Sally will be over her troubles with me. So if I disappear, just don't feel bad.
Hi, Sally. This is Alice, and I just got a very disturbing message from Larry. It makes me feel like it's time we had a meeting with the neighbors to talk about doing something for him in an organized way. Could you give me a call as soon as...
This is Gwen. We can host the meeting about Larry's trust fund.
Murray, as some of you know, is Larry's uncle. He's 81 years old, and he's basically been the only person in Larry's family that has cared for him for the last 30 years. He brings him meals 3 times a week. He provides money for extra things in Larry's life.
Larry's also 80 and he's frail.
He's 81.
He's 81. But the bottom line is we want to find some way to help Larry. That's well said.
And the person that you made the movie about went along, or was he working with students, or just...
No. This is that you speak about the main character of the documentary.
Yeah.
He lives across the street from her, and he is mentally challenged.
No,
right?
I know, I understand.
Cooperated completely, right?
Well, yes, and he participated. I think it's a really good question that he got to travel all over the world. We went to Qatar, we went to, let's see, where did we go? We went, well, he loved California. We went to California about 4 times. He went to Florida, he went to Texas. He really got to travel and do much more than he ever expected to do in his life. And he made friends wherever he went. I was in Mexico City showing the film. There's a Jewish film festival in Mexico City, and I was invited to go. And Larry wasn't able to come
He's
with
Jewish,
me.
by the way.
Yeah, he was Jewish, and so we went to the Jewish Film Festival, and I'm there, and I'm doing a Q&A in a great big theater, maybe 500 people, and a man raises his hand and said, "I know that hardware store. My father used to own that hardware store." I mean, this was just, there was something so special about Larry, and I felt like there was a kind of divine presence in the filmmaking for me, because I took a journey that I wasn't expecting, and it just happened. One door kept opening after another that I couldn't have done. It was beyond my power. And so it was a very, very special experience for me. And that story was somehow propelled out into the world.
It's a big gift. It's a big gift for everybody.
Yeah. So then you also did about 2 women?
Yes. Yes.
Can you tell us about this one?
Sure. It was called Body and Soul, Diana and Kathy. It's available on Canopy, the streaming service. And the 2 women had a symbiotic relationship where they supported each other. So one woman had a master's degree, and the other woman had a low IQ. She had a form of Down syndrome. But she had complete use of her body, and she could drive. And the other woman had no use of her hands, of her legs. She was completely in a power chair, and she had to use her head to tap out what she wanted to say.
Wow.
But she spoke she spoke, but only Diana, her friend, could understand her. And so it was I thought it was a very special relationship, and they lived independently, not in an institution. They lived in their own home, and they were advocates for people with disabilities. So one of the things I did with them is I took a train from Illinois, where they lived, to Washington, D.C., where they went to lobby. And I thought, I live in New York, I'm able-bodied, and I have never been to lobby to my senator. I've never, had that passion or that drive to go down to Washington and go into that office and say, here's what we need. And these 2 women made this very arduous journey from the Midwest, and their senator at the time was Barack Obama. And we went into his office, and they told what they needed. They wanted to have the institutions in Illinois closed, and they were just passionate advocates. Diana had grown up partly in an institution that her parents had been very abusive. She'd been taken away from them, and they just didn't have a place for her. So they put her in an institution, and she ended up like teaching others in the institution and being a real asset to that community. But of course, as soon as she could get out, she got out of it. And it was Kathy's idea that Kathy and Diana were put in a group home together, and Kathy—
That's how they met each other.
Yeah, in a group home. And Kathy kept her eye on Diana, and finally she kind of proposed the idea. Kathy's mother didn't want her to. She thought it would be unsafe. And they kind of escaped from the group home. The group home was closing, and they just found an apartment, and they kind of solved all their problems before Kathy's mother could intervene. And so
it's crazy. We can't go on no trip. We can't go on vacation.
Medicare says we can only go 3 places and still get their home health care services, medical appointments, haircuts, church.
It's crazy. I tell you, it's crazy.
I know we aren't supposed to go out of the house to lobby, but we are doing it anyway.
When I was a little girl, the doctor didn't tell my parents that I had Down syndrome. And they could not accept my disability. When I was 5 years old, they didn't have special classes at that time, but I had to learn how to do a lot of this on my own. So later on, my dad started hitting me with the waker handles and almost broke every bone in my body. So they put me in a 3-point nursing home for 4 years. You've got to fight for your own rights. You can do it. I have been Kathy PA for 37 years. If Kathy and I can do it, so can you. Do it.
There is really like a common thread in at least in the two films, but I have a feeling in every film, and we'll probably will hear in a minute. I would ask you about what you're doing now, but there's quite complicated stories and a lot of very inspirational characteristics come out of them. From the two stories.
I think you're just doing a huge service
Yes.
to these people. And as much as you think that you never had the passion maybe to go to the congressman, you have a passion to help these people, because the service that you give them allows everybody to learn from them and also get more. And this is not less important.
Yeah, no, but but also, we go into the question, can documentaries change attitudes?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Maybe even more than fiction in a way, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I've always found inspiration in both documentaries and in fiction. And I think for me, it's always been, the idea that that could be me, that could be my child, that could be my mother. And so that line between ability and disability to me it's very easy to cross. And we should see it that way. We should see it as fluid, that's me and that's you. And that's why we need universal design. We need universal access. We need to have every place be open to everyone, because we don't know our fate.
Uh-oh.
It's true.
So what's your new project, your new film?
So it's a very, it's about 20 years ago, I started making a film about a Down syndrome couple that were getting married. And my idea was that everybody deserves love. And I followed the couple for 3 years through their engagement and their wedding and their first year of marriage. And then the marriage was not going very well. And they were from 2 different cultures and 2 different religions. And the parents eventually said that this isn't going to work. It wasn't working for the parents as well as they wanted. And so the marriage ended in a divorce, but not because the Down syndrome couple fell out of love, but mainly because there was just an incompatibility among the in-laws. And they asked, yeah, it was very painful to watch and be part of. And they asked me to stop making the film, which was a huge investment. Zippy, if you work on a film for 3 years,
yes,
and you have to, it's like throwing your heart away. But I did, because out of respect. And then about 2 years ago, I got a Christmas card from the bride's family that we've stayed in touch. And they said, we're sorry to tell you, but the bride, I don't want to use their names right now, but the bride has Alzheimer's disease. So at 47, she had Alzheimer's, and it was rapidly progressing. So last summer, I sent a camera crew to film her last day in her apartment. And I'm now working through my old footage to see how much of I can tell without showing the groom or having him part of the story. We found a lot of footage that's usable. And I think we're going to use the mother's point of view, because I don't think it's a point of view we've seen very often of a mother.
Right. Yeah, it's a very exceptional story.
Yeah.
They divorced because of the in-laws. Wow.
Yeah, and she was the bride was a very exceptional person. That she was a motivational speaker. That she knows sign language. She would do sign language to songs, and she was athletic. She did karate and horseback riding, things like that. And so I want to tell the story through the mother's point of view. And this was a family that had promised they would never put their child in an institution. And now they've had to, because both the parents are in their 80s. And
Yeah.
so,
Wow.
You know, as you speak, there's an emotion between a sad story to uplifting story. How do you navigate? How do you find the balance not to fall on each side too much and bring both sides of the story?
well, this is the most difficult one that I've done in that way. The others, we always had some kind of sort of uplifting experience, if you want to use that they got an award, or they were able to, in Larry's case, he fell in love and he was able to date someone.
Yeah, it's a very, very, very compelling moment. Amazing.
But in this story, I think it's going to be a little bit more challenging. And I hope it's a celebration of her life, because I think every life has value, and to be able to appreciate that, and appreciate a mother who goes on this journey with her daughter.
Yeah, it's
hoping
really a story of commitment also.
Yeah.
Of commitment, of love, of believing in, really not getting back or getting away from challenges, and being able to rise above, right? Amazing.
Now, this is one of the things I love about Zippy, as a colleague and a friend, that she has such a creative mind that I tell her this story that I'm struggling with, and she immediately does articulate these positive things. And that's, for me, Zippy, that's incredibly
But
helpful.
it's come from your text. It's from your text. It's from what you told us. So it's something, it's very important. And I know that you are also very careful not to impose your ideas on our students' ideas, but you come from their text and trying to help them to do the best they can from their text, and not what you think the text should be.
But I also see you do this in your class, that you'll get this kind of amorphous treatment, that a student hasn't really zeroed in on what's important in their story. And I've heard you just take this and go, but here's what you're doing, and pointing it out. And
So-
thank you for doing that for me.
Yeah, but I also wanted you to come and talk to us from what we already, I think, know about you, everybody who listened, that you care so much about our students. And I know that you are perceptive because you choose to be perceptive. You are looking of what they need and stuff. And I want to know if you're worried about them in our kind of chaotic world. I mean, where they go, if you can feel their struggles, anxiety, they look around, especially now, but even before the protest and everything. Now it's really more complicated. So how do you see them? Do you see, because you are at Tisch now for, I don't know how many years, 20, 25?
20, yeah.
He's the only one who never took a sabbatical yet. However, you see, that shows you. Do you see a change in the students, going, after, what they did, COVID in high school, the students of now, those who graduate, have those mess with all this protest, but how do you see them?
Well, I think resilience for me is a very important word, and that I did notice, not this year, but last year, was the weakest class I had seen in terms of resilience and, the word grit
Yes.
Yeah. There's a very good book actually called Grit and talks about what makes resilience, what makes grit. And I saw students who lacked grit. And but this year I see a stronger student body. And also, Zippy, you know, I've learned a lot too. That I feel like I really had to fight for what I have gotten in life, a lot of it. And so I realize it's kind of a different world for our students. It may not be as hard in some ways as it was for me, but I see them struggle with other things. I see them struggle with a lot of self-doubt. I see them struggle with wondering where their place in the world is. And I've come to be much more patient about students who are suffering from depression, I think. That I didn't really understand what some of the symptoms of depression were. I just got very impatient. You know, I never feel I had the luxury to stay in bed. I
Right.
never missed a class during
Yeah.
high school or college, except if I think in high school I was very sick once and I did, but I never missed a class in college. You know, I never slept in. I never felt I could do that. And I now understand that maybe there are more powerful conditions that students can't just push through them. And to be patient with themselves. You know, we're not teaching brain surgery or rocket science here. We're
Yeah.
teaching filmmaking. We're working with artists. So if you can't do it this year, maybe take some time off, you know, maybe work a job and then come back. I've gotten a lot more flexible, I think.
Yeah. So the question is to what degree extent we should be involved, because we are not allowed to ask our students, or they cannot specify to us what is the source of their, either it's anxiety or depression or you know, kind of feeling I'm not good enough, whatever, anorexia, or you know, all this. We cannot really ask them. We are not allowed to. No, we're not allowed to. We can only, we have to almost stop them if they start going too much into being specific. We have to tell them the truth. We are not allowed to go into it, but you know, we have this a wellness center that you can go, and there are lots of psychologists and people to help you.
But if a student feels close to you and they feel that you can give them a
It's
hand.
nothing to do, right? We're not allowed to, right, Alice?
Well, we're not allowed to be prescriptive, but we are allowed to listen. If a student wants to talk, I let them talk. And sometimes I say, boy, this is a lot to handle. I hope you're getting some support in this. Would you like my help in getting some support? Is what I say. Because you're right, I'm not trained. And I try to be empathetic, but direct them to where they can really get some professional help.
In terms of documentaries, do you see a change of what kind of documentary stories they choose to tell?
Yeah, I've seen some very intimate personal stories. I would call them very brave. Sometimes I'm afraid the students aren't very clear about what are good boundaries, that they talk about things that I might not talk about publicly, but
like what?
Well, like suicide attempts or depression, alcoholism,
Right.
you know, those kinds of addictive illnesses.
Yeah.
I was this is not something of gap of generations, that your generation didn't taste so much of it, and this generation, the younger generation, because every time you teach another generation, you really stay at the same age all the time, but with different conditions, and they come up with you can give them the same subject for 20 years and each generation will come with a different story. So where do you find the room to say, okay, now it's their time, so how do I help them this way?
I love that you're saying that because that came up so often. Like, is this a family program? Can I use? I want to use. Okay.
So you can say everything.
That one of the students said, "Oh, I cried like a bitch," and I thought that was offensive, because it was a bitch being a woman, and so crying like a woman would be a bad thing. So I asked the class, I said, I was sort of offended by I cried like a bitch. And I asked, how did you feel about it? And they said, oh, no, it didn't bother us at all.
But it's true.
Okay. So yeah, I always had to check in. It's like your references. I remember one of my first classes, I said, oh, like Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. And it was blank. Nobody knew what I was talking about. I thought, oh no, I need to upgrade my,
It's really the slang, and you need to update the slang. And it's a funny way how slang is being changed all the time, and they know it. And I see it with my kids, they say things and I look at them and say, I have no clue what they're talking about. And then every time they explain me, it changes over time. They mean the same thing, but they say differently. So it's really a very different way of looking at things. And then they come to you and you say, I don't know that I can tell you things about it,
Yeah. So there are two examples I can think of is that.
Sorry.
Okay. When I first started teaching, one Halloween, my son partied with some of my students. He was going to school at Sarah Lawrence.
Wow,
and
until I move.
And so he ended up at a party with with my students, which was very embarrassing to me. And then I began to realize, I'm kind of the same age as my students' parents. And then a few years later, I began to realize.
You became like the grandparents.
I'm like their grandparents. They keep referencing their grandparents when they talk about me. And I think I have a joke that everything I know I learned in documentaries from my students because I'm always learning about hip hop. I'm learning about I learned FOMA from my students, fear of missing out. FOMO, fear of missing out. FOMO? It's fear of missing out.
Oh.
It's like, if you have FOMO when, I want to go to that, but I want to stay home tonight too, and so it's very, and there's also a joke that teachers are like vampires for their students, that we get our youth from their information.
Right, true. My husband always tells me that you only know about things you did a documentary. He keeps saying it. But we ask our students, especially in documentaries, to do research. Actually, I ask them also when they do a fiction, to do a research about the world of your characters, or if, or whatever their profession or relationship.
But even research, they look at it differently.
Well, apparently, when you look at our students protesting on the street now in the universities, my feeling is that a lot of them don't know what they are protesting for or against. They don't really know, or somehow, they don't know what is it. What is the river to the sea, for example? They don't know where the river, where the sea. They don't know what does it mean. I don't know what you think about all this movement now.
Well, I don't know. I've seen some very well-informed students. There was a student that was expelled from NYU.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that she, I don't know if you remember this, that there were, I'm sorry, Zibi, I'm not remembering the exact thing. There were some photographs up on the wall at Boke's library, and she pulled them down.
Yeah. There were these pictures of the people who were kidnapped.
Okay, the hostages.
Right.
So she went and pulled them down. First of all, I didn't think they should have been on the library to begin with, but that she pulled them down. And then she was expelled for that. And for me, then my student did an interview with her that he couldn't bring her on campus because she's forbidden to be on campus. So he did an interview with her. And I was so surprised how well-informed she was. Now, this had been a spontaneous act. She hadn't premeditated it. She'd just seen it and done it. But her background was quite full of experience and information. And so, but I know that all the students are not, because I did bring it up in my class. I said, what does from the river to the sea mean? Do you know what that means? And then we talked about the range of feeling about that expression in my class. And some students didn't know. And some students thought it was both an Israeli and a Palestinian chant. So I said, I don't think so. But they thought that Israel meant to go and eliminate Gaza and use it that way.
Right. Right.
And so it was very important to have that conversation to find out what they thought it meant. And then there were other students who were very well informed, and they said, no, and you don't understand what that means. And one student said, it can be very frightening to hear that chant. And so it was a really good discussion about meaning. And so I thought it was important to have that kind of informative and.
But we don't. You did it, I did it, but most professors don't do it. They don't bring it to the classroom. This is
Maybe
something
they
that
don't know enough.
maybe they don't know enough. Right.
I think, a lot of them use the platform just to protest, as a protest. It just happened to be the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, but there's an excuse to join some protest, and they protest. I think they have few things that they want to protest about. Those who do know, they're very opinionated, and they have their own ideas about it.
Which is okay, as long as they know what they're talking about. But you mentioned before about Larry, your character from the collector from Bedford Street, and you did go into like leadership, right? You used them. And the question, do you expect our students to become leaders? And if, and what tools do we give them to become leaders? Because, those who are now on the street are going to be the next leaders.
I do expect them to be leaders, Zippy. I'm very hopeful that they will be. And I think that, I think about what true leadership is, that you look at your community and you serve your community. What do we need in this community, and how can we get it? And, there's a Senate race right now in New Jersey where Menendez, who's I think
my God,
fairly corrupt.
Yeah.
And then if you think about the governor tried to appoint his wife basically to be the senator. And then there's this representative, I think his last name is Chin. Both he and his wife are dedicated community activists that are really there in service. And I hope they don't become corrupt by the system, but I was so impressed to hear their credentials and the way they're dedicated to making change. And, it's very, very hard to work against. There's a democratic machine in New Jersey, and it's very corrupt. And I thought, what courage that takes. And I hope we inspire our students with the kind of courage it takes to look at who you're serving and say, what do they need? And what is the purpose of our governance? What is the purpose of, this is why I worked for 3 years on the bylaws for this department.
So what are the bylaws, if you can just make sure people...
So the bylaws are the rules by which we want to govern ourselves.
Right.
That a lot of, I don't think people realize that university departments are pretty much into self-governance. And So we need to make rules and how we want to treat each other. And for me, that kind of governance is really important. It's not fun. It's not glamorous.
Yeah, I
we
was on
had
this
hours
committee in
and
the
hours.
beginning, right?
Yeah, hours and hours and going over
Yes,
details
every
and
word, right.
how
But
would
how
this
can
work?
how can we pass it to the students? What should we add to their education? Because this is what we do. We're supposed to do, educate. And it's not just knowledge. It's not
Right.
enough. Except not in the world of today, when they're exposed to so much, how they sort what information they get, what they can believe, they have to build like such a strong inner compass.
A lot of
Yes.
responsibility and ethics.
So it's yeah, and we have really a lot of responsibility.
We do.
I am very frustrated from, the semester now is over. And yes, in every class, I'm very proud of what they achieved, right? But I'm frustrated that there is such a chunk of things which we should include in the 4 years that with us, and we don't. And I don't know how can we change that, especially now, because
I think you'll find there are some younger colleagues, Zippy, who are very aligned with you. I would go to Alfonso.
yes, I talked to him.
Siobhan,
Right.
And one thing that I used to do in my classes, I would give the New York Times weekly quiz. See, do you know what's happening in the world?
Right.
And I often come in and say, what's the biggest thing happening in the world today?
Right. And I ask them, and many of them don't know.
Right. So to keep pushing that, because you actually are in a position of great respect. We only are able to teach because the students respect us. There are many more of them than there are of us.
Yeah.
So we have respect. So I would encourage that. And then I would go back to the mentorship question, because anyone that I see a kernel of leadership in, I tell them that, because often they haven't been told. Do you know you have leadership qualities? Have you thought of running for student government? Have you thought of
No, I told the class, few times in the semester, I said, you are NYU students, you are very privileged, and you should use it. You can change the world. Don't, everything you do, you're a storyteller, and stories can really move people. So you should really shape your stories in a way that not only about your own script, but beyond it.
Did you say that because you were disappointed in the kinds of scripts you were getting?
No, because I'm not sure if they go beyond their script. This is what I'm telling them. You have to go beyond the subject. There are so many other elements you have to pursue in order to make sure that you care about such a variety of subjects. And because I was surprised a little bit, that look what happened in Sudan, nobody on the street. Look what happened in Ukraine, nobody on the street. Look what happened a few years ago when in Syria, by their own government were killed. We don't know what happened now in Burma. So I keep asking them, how we're supposed to be on the street for as much as we can to embrace all those terrible things that happens around us.
But the question is how to present it, because they live in a different world.
Right. Yeah. Social media.
The one globalization changed the world totally for them. All the immediate media and the social media changed everything. And also they prioritize importance in a very different way than we do. And it's also about age. They have different things that they care for. And it takes time, and it's not only about leading, it's about caring and take part in decisions making that lead to other people to lead us. So there's so many levels and so many stages, and we just need to be just to plant the ideas and hope that they will grow in the right direction and take care of things
but
later
you know,
on.
I'm going to pick up on your idea to connect to our new faculty members, a new generation, because we never talk about this among us, you know, in the faculty meetings. Or this subject doesn't come out. You know, we do where the industry is going and what classes we have to add in order that they will be able. That's you know to up to date and what they have to train themselves. Fine, sure, but what about the other aspects of what? I mean, I don't want to sound pompous, education, but this is what it is.
And you know, our mission statement in our department ends with, we want to create responsible citizens of the world. And I read that to every class. On the first day of class, I said, I get chills reading this. I'm so proud to work in a department.
It was a hard work.
This is my mission statement.
Yeah.
And I believe in this. And that's what we're
I
doing.
should do it too. I should start with that too.
Do it, because it's, for me,
Yeah,
it's
I will.
like,
Thank you.
for me, it's like a prayer for what this semester will be.
Yeah.
This is who I want you to be. Here's the roadmap. Come with me on this journey. And if we end this class and you are looking at the world in a different way, that's what I want.
Yeah.
Responsible citizens of the world. I'm so proud of that. I was thinking of actually, you know, putting it on the back of the grad robe that I'm going to wear.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We are walking with
You are responsible citizens of the world. I'm so proud of you. Yeah.
Listen, Silly, we got a lot from him. I did.
Yeah.
Listen, Alice, we would like to thank you so much that you come to talk to us. Yeah, we got a lot from you.
And good luck.
Thank you, and good luck on your new project.
Thank you. Thank you both so much.
Bye,
See you all
Bobby.
next
Yeah,
week.
bye,
Bye,
Silly.
Silly.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.